Hello, and welcome to episode 165 of the Casual Try Hard podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm James.
And this week we're doing an evergreen topic. We're talking about back in our days, Cons of Tarkir edition.
Yeah, not starting at the very beginning, starting at our common beginning. How's that?
Yeah, because you restarted in Theros block.
Yeah.
So like 4 sets before me or something?
Yeah, Born of the Gods, I think, was my first set.
Okay. So I picked Cons because best set and where we both started.
Yep.
So we're kind of taking a page out of the Receivables playbook. Not that exact format, but we're just going to kind of reminisce about like Cons block. Or not Cons block, Cons of Tarkir set.
Set in particular, yep.
Yeah.
There comes weeks where either we need a quick episode or there's not a whole lot of things to talk about kind of in the doldrums before like a new set release. A lot of times there's, off weeks where there's just nothing going on. And we thought this might be a fun thing that we can do, from time to time, start working back through our history and maybe eventually catch up to some of the like new releases now. But I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, so if you're like, hey man, I have better ideas for shows than this, you can add us on social media. All of the links are in the description.
Yep.
So you can track us down and be like, here's a better idea.
Yeah, or if you think that there's a better format for this show in particular, like if there's something about Cons of Tarkir you wished we would have talked about, and maybe we can apply this to other back in my day episodes going forward, let us know. Like Brian said, links are all in the description. Also, if you want to help support the show, we have a TCG player affiliate link, tcg.CasualTryHardMTG.com. Head over there, sign in like normal. Anything you buy will help support the show. We'll get a little percentage to help keep us afloat. If you guys want to support us a little bit more directly, you can do so at patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. Patrons get access to our show notes. They get to listen to our pre-show, which this week was basically an entire other episode. So if you want to hear that, you can chip a couple bucks into Patreon. Get signed up for that. Along with those two benefits, you also get put on my mailing list every couple months. I send something out in the mail as a thank you to everyone who really helps keep us going. So thank you all. And if you want to get added to my list, chip a couple bucks in, sign up, and you'll be eligible.
Yeah.
The one last thing we have is our YouTube, where you can see our smiling faces. We're trying to do all of our episodes from here on out as video as well. So if you want to watch us on YouTube, we're CasualTryHardMTG on YouTube. You can catch us there also.
Yeah. So, looking back at Cons of Tarkir is also timely because I guess a couple weeks ago at this point when you're listening to this, they started the spoilers for New Capenna. Mm-hmm. And New Capenna is a shard set. So Cons of Tarkir was a wedge set.
Yep.
So it was 2 allied colors and an enemy color.
Yep.
To make a wedge. And then New Capenna is a wedge set, a shard set where it is the 3 like allied. No, I guess what is it? Like one color has 2 allies.
Yeah.
So like Grixis is allied with black and red.
Yep.
So they're shared with each other, and they're bringing back a card type from Cons, and that is the Ascendancies.
Yeah, it was a cycle they did back in Cons where each faction had its own like enchantment that did something every turn.
Yeah. And so we've got Broker's Ascendancy, which is Bant colors, so green, white, blue. And at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. On one hand, this screams Commander, but on the other hand, all the cards that have screamed Commander for the last 3 years have broken every constructed format. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I could be missing something. It doesn't seem great, but we could also just get clowned by this.
Time will tell.
So
Just look at Age of the Treachery.
Golos, and it goes on and on.
Yeah.
Right, but you have Broker's Ascendancy, and then they also have a bunch of tri-lands.
Yep. It's
so they're
the opposite ones that we had in Ikoria. So we had the wedge ones in Ikoria, and we're going to get the shards ones now with New Capenna.
And these, due to their commander play, are actually like commanding a pretty high price right now. Like the ones from Ikoria are still like $15.
Like 15 to 20, and depending on like which version and foiling or whatever, even more than that.
Yeah. So if these get like cheap-ish around release, like if they get to like $8, there's like kind of like their floor is probably closer to 15 or 20 long term.
Yep. Start scooping them up.
Yeah, just keep an eye out. But like the Ascendancies being like a borrowed, card, cycle from cons, it kind of felt natural to talk about cons and some things that like could inform. You might see some things from Cons Block or from Cons of Tarkir that could inform how New Capenna gets made.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, it was fun.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about fun stuff. This Magic is fun.
It's supposed to be, at least.
Supposed to be. We're trying to make it fun.
Yeah.
So, this feels like a million years ago.
It was a million years ago.
Yeah, so the set actually came out September 2014.
Yeah. Feels like forever ago.
Wild. I'd been back playing since like August.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
This was, I believe, my fourth set after I came back. So there was, I'm pretty sure I came back in Born of the Gods, but I didn't play in that pre-release. So it was Born of the Gods, Journey to Nyx, Magic 2015,
and
then this set.
Yeah. This was my very first pre-release.
Yeah.
Like, ever.
Yeah, I played in the Journey pre-release and the 2015 pre-release, so I think this would have been my third one.
So, because of the nature of the set, and that there were they're not tribes, clans,
yeah.
That's it. Your pre-release kits were clan-themed.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave you 5 regular packs, and then you got a seeded pack. So if you got the Sultai, which was black, green, and blue, pack, your 6th pack was all cards that were that wedge.
Yeah, I think your pre-release promo was in that pack, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like they are today. Like in a traditional pre-release today, you can get any rare or mythic from the set as your pre-release promo. Back then, there were only specific cards you could get as a pre-release promo.
Yeah, there was a handful of them.
Yeah, so you would have, I don't know, like one of 10 different cards as your pre-release promo, instead of like literally every rare had a printing as a pre-release promo. And that was in your seeded pack, and then there were cards obviously of the colors that the clan was, but there were also cards they made sure had like that clan's mechanic as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there were cards like if you were opening a Sultai pre-release kit, you were going to have delve cards and hopefully be able to build a Sultai deck out of that, because you're kind of already headed in that direction.
Yeah, so this led to one of the thing of you'd open your other 5 packs and all the cards for your clan were garbage. You basically threw away your seeded pack.
Yep.
And then the other one that was good, do you remember when people were getting the wrong seeded pack?
No, I don't remember that.
There were a couple people that got like a Sultai pack, like a Sultai pre-release kit, and then got a Jeskai seeded pack. I distinctly remember that. So I don't know how real it was, but I remember people being like, I got the wrong seeded pack.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want Jeskai. I got, I have Jeskai cards. But, so this is different than now, in that, like, now it's just like, they just can basically just give you 6 packs.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then your pre-release rare. These were much more of a kit. The ones now, like, they come in a box and they call them a kit, but they're not really a kit.
Like for guilds and allegiance, you picked a guild, right? Did they have a seeded pack? I don't remember.
I don't. Maybe the promo was for a given thing, but I thought it was just regular.
Okay. I do know that for New Capenna, we're gonna pick a family.
Oh, we're gonna pick a family. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's going to be a seeded pack or not, but I know you're picking a family for pre-release.
Okay, that might just like say like what colors your promo is going to be or whatever.
Yeah, maybe.
But like it was a way, especially like if you're like I really am like drawn to the things that this clan is doing. I want to play that play style. I'm trying to remember which one.
It was Dawnbringer Charioteers for Journey to Nyx. Was
okay.
Like leaps and bounds better than every other promo.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for Journey to Nyx, there were only 5 pre-release promos, so there was one for each color.
Gotcha.
And that one was leaps and bounds above the rest. So like if you got the white one, like you just won your pre-release.
Yeah, there was one of them sold out. I forget which one it was. But that is the like danger of the seeded packs.
Mm-hmm.
Is like especially after like the first pre-release and you're like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
Like this strategy is so much better than everything else. Then like all the Jeskai ones get sold out.
Yeah.
For the next pre-releases. And I know that happened, but I forget which one it was for.
Yeah, I don't remember which one sold out. I want to say it was Abzan.
It may have been. I have some Abzan stories or things I remember about Abzan. So this is when like pre-releases were huge.
Right. Huge.
Right.
Yes.
Like,
according to the WPN website, pre-release packs for Streets of New Capenna will have a seeded booster.
Okay.
The draft booster contains cards entirely aligned with the family on the box, making pre-release packs more faction-friendly.
Ooh, faction-friendly. So, this is back when, whatever, Myrtle Beach at that point had like 50, 60,000 people in it, maybe 40.
Mm-hmm.
And like, cons pre-releases were between probably 40 to 80 people.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they were huge in a town that is not that giant, and it had another store.
Right.
That also had, I'm assuming, a reasonable size pre-release.
Yeah, I never went to one of their pre-releases, but yeah, I mean, there were certainly pre-releases that I remember not having enough table space, and I think he had space for 100 people to sit.
Definitely Fate. I remember distinctly sitting on the floor, but I might have been sitting on the floor for cons too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so these were a big deal. They were a really big thing. So let's talk about this set. So we already talked about like mechanically, it was wedges, right? And each clan had their own thing that they did, their own mechanic associated with them. So what were the mechanics? What were the clans doing?
Like at the time, these were all new, with the exception of Delve. So the first one is Sultai clan was green, black, and blue. The mechanic for that clan was Delve that we had seen in Time Spiral, right? That was the only place it had been printed before.
There are 2 cards that had Delve, Tombstalker, and Death Rattle.
Yeah, I think so.
Like kill target like non-green creature or something weird.
And then all of the rest of them are new mechanics. They're ones that you're gonna recognize because they've showed up since then. even if they weren't named. But Delve was the only one that existed prior to this. So, like we said, Sultai had Delve. Mardu was red, black, and white, and its mechanic was Raid. So it cared if you had attacked with a creature that turn, which I don't think has come back named as Raid, but there's pretty much a card in every set that cares if you've attacked with a creature that turn.
It came back in Ixalan. It was the pirate mechanic.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yep.
And then Temur is red, blue, and green, and its mechanic was Ferocious, was basically just caring about having a creature with power 4 or greater.
Yeah, it was kind of the Theros Beyond Death mechanic.
Yeah, a little
for bit. Red green, but it wasn't like keyworded.
Yeah, it was the draft archetype, right?
Yeah, like Nessian Horn Beetle.
Yeah.
Like got a counter if you had something like with power 4 or greater. Mm-hmm. There was like some like 1 green red creature that could only, it was like big, but it could only attack if you controlled another creature with power 4 or greater.
Yep.
So yeah.
It was like Garrett's mechanic in was it Core 21 also?
I think, yeah.
Whichever one was the Planeswalkers.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had a bunch of cards that cared about having a creature with power 4 or greater.
Yeah.
And then we had Abzan, black, green, white, and its mechanic was Outlast. This came back in Modern Horizons 2, I think. There was like a card or two with Outlast. Mechanic is super forgettable. It's not very good, but it had an ability where you could pay a mana and tap it to do something. Like put a counter on itself or something.
It was you put a +1/+1 counter on that creature.
Yeah, but it had to be at sorcery speed.
Mm-hmm.
So like you couldn't block and do it. You could only do it or use it like to attack or block, which is kind of weird. Makes for not great games.
Yeah, they had some cards that were like +1/+1 counters matter cards. Mm-hmm. Like Abzan Falconer, which is, hey, any creature you have with a +1/+1 counter, have flying. Mm-hmm. So there's like 1 for flying, 1 for lifelink.
Probably. There's probably 1 for trample too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But they have, but yeah, it was not the best. I don't think it saw like any constructed play.
No, I don't think so.
And it wasn't a great draft archetype either.
Yeah. And then the last one you're definitely going to recognize because it's become evergreen, and that's Jeskai with Prowess. Jeskai is white, blue, red, and I'm sure you all know what Prowess does by now. It's in every set now. But it was a new mechanic then.
And then we have Morph.
Yeah, the glue that holds the set together.
Yes, so Morph was creatures with Morph, you could pay 3 generic mana. And you could play them face down, and they'd be a 2/2. Mm-hmm. And they had a cost associated with them to flip them over and make them not a 2/2, make them whatever creature they actually were.
Right.
And some creatures had an effect when they unmorphed. So I think like what was it? Ponyback Brigade made 1/1s when it unmorphed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. The cool thing about Morph, and the reason it's so important for this set, and kind of the reason we were talking about New Capenna earlier, is that in sets that are focused on shards or wedges, like 3 color pairings instead of 2 color pairings, you need something for the limited environment to do while you're fixing your mana. Like while you're making sure you have all of your colors and can cast all of your spells that, require all 3 colors a lot of times, you need something else to do. And Morph having a generic mana as the cost to morph the thing gives you something to do early while you're kind of setting up for your late game.
And this is something I had, like, what did we learn from this set or format, right, is that having like limited environments that have both smoothing mechanics, which is what Morph is, right? It smooths out your mana.
Yep.
Right. You could be a Temur deck and have 3 forests on the battlefield and have a turn 3 play. Right. So it gives you that smoothing mechanic, but it gave you a mana sink as well. Because there was a whole cycle of commons that unmorphed for 2, and then their wedge. So like Ponyback Brigade unmorphed for 2, white, red, black. So you had one card gave you something to do on turn 3, and then when you drew your 2 lands of the other color, you now had something to do on turn 5.
Right.
So one card smoothed you on the front end and gave you a mana sink on the back end. Like, you always had something to do with your mana because of Morph.
Are there any like other mechanics that kind of did a similar thing that fill both roles, or is Morph the only one?
I think Morph might be the only one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Usually now, the way they get around this now is sets, right? Like what modern Magic is, you never run out of things to do.
Yeah.
So you're like, cards now, every card has like draw a card on it or some like activated ability, so you just incidentally are getting cards that do everything. Yep. Or that like keep your hand full. This was like old timey Magic where we were still like, you could get empty handed.
Yeah.
Like, and not have like, 2 secret cards on the battlefield. Like, oh, if I pay this 3 mana, I get a 2/2 Samurai and I draw a card.
You activated my trap card.
Yeah, like you don't have you don't have that in older Magic sets. So this was, I can't think of another one that kind of did like both ends.
Yeah, like the most recent is Cycling, that kind of smoothed you and maybe fixed your mana a little bit, but didn't really give you like something. There was no mana sink in Cycling.
Yeah.
Although I guess there kind of was, because if you drew, like if your Cycling card was a dud that you drew late game, you could, like, it's a place to use your mana.
Yeah. So like in Shards block, the smoothing mechanic was Cycling.
Okay.
Right? Like a lot of remember like old Living End from like 2015, 2016, where you were like cycling like Pale Recluses and stuff?
Yeah.
Like Pale Recluses from Shards block.
Yeah. Monsters.
Right? It was like, yeah, like these like these air commons that just like cycled for to like get you a land or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, where they were like, fine, we'll give you a new card. So since you can't cast this one, Morph was like, here, we're gonna give you a card you can always cast if you hit your 3rd land drop.
Yeah.
So like, make sure you like put 18 lands in your deck.
Yep.
So you always hit your 3rd land drop, and that you know you're going to hit your 5th land drop to unmorph this thing.
Yep.
And the thing about Morph, Morph allowed you to play like a head game. Right? Like you attack with your 2/2.
What is it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, do I block with my 2/2 and then you unmorph it and just eat my 2/2?
Right.
Or, right, is it that stupid, like, I forget what it was called. It was like one in a blue for like an 0/4 wall that like unmorphed by you showing a blue card from your hand.
Yeah.
Well, like, I'm just going to trade my 2/2 for your 2/2 if it's an 0/4.
Right.
Right.
That's
so
not
like
do anything anyway.
Yeah. Maybe you block because you want to unmorph your thing and eat mine.
Yeah.
But maybe so like you got to play this head game. You also got to do something that I assume they would do on Arena, which is at the end of every game, you had to flip over all of your morph cards.
I don't think they do it on Arena.
Are there any morphs on Arena right now?
No, but I don't remember what it was. There was something that I thought you would have to reveal and they didn't. Oh, it was companions. They never showed us your opponent's deck.
Oh, well, the only way it could be their companion is if it was compliant.
Well,
so
on Arena, the only way you can morph is if it's compliant.
Fair. Fair. But like in like a regular game of paper Magic, if I showed you a Loris, you wouldn't get to look at my deck to make sure everything was CMC 3 or less. But if I cast a Lily
judge though, I think
it was something
verify. I don't know, we never had to because there weren't any events.
Yeah, but I think it was like if you showed me a Loris and then cast a Liliana the Veil, clearly I know that Lily can't be in your deck with a Loris.
Right.
So I know that you don't have the companion thing. I think was how it was supposed to be. It had to be something that was like easily verifiable and someone could tell like, oh wait, like you cast a 2-drop in your Obosh deck.
Yeah.
That's not allowed. But yeah, they might not make you do that. But you used to in paper Magic, back in my day.
Yeah.
Right at the end of the game you had to flip over all of your morphs to show that you just didn't like slam a forest and call it a morph.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's a morph. I'm just not going to unmorph it. And it's like a forest. And it's like, oh. Oops.
Yep.
So, but part of the reason I brought this up is like, this new Capenna needs a smoothing mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about like gangs and espionage.
Yep. Right?
And like one of the factions is like has to deal with like information. I think the Esper faction is like information and like deception and stuff.
Yeah, they're shady lawyers or something.
Yeah. Yeah, like but like there's definitely like you could see like, oh, Morph being the mechanic that is tied to probably everyone, right? That's like, oh, hey, we're like trying to do espionage and infiltrate things so you don't know what we are.
Yeah.
Right? Because we just had cycling, and they can't do a 3-color set without like a smoothing mechanic.
Yeah, they, I think Marrow said on his blog that even though the Triomes have cycling, they're the only cards with cycling in the set.
Gotcha.
So, cycling is not a smoothing mechanic, so it's going to have to be either something new or
like Morph.
I guess
Morph seems the best.
Like treasures could work, but
we just did that.
That's not it.
Yeah, like I don't know if I could handle like I don't know blue-white ramping with treasures.
Yeah,
like it's bad enough when your opponent has to go with a 3rd color so they can play their like turn 4 Teferi Hero of Dominaria.
Yeah.
Now if they just get to do it in hard blue-white, like no, thank you. It's like it's a deck in stone, but you get the treasure as opposed to giving your opponent the clue. It's like no, we're not what we wanted. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Morph was our mechanic to smooth out this set because I'm like, well, they're doing the Ascendancies, and everyone looks back at cons as like top 5 draft formats of all time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be pretty, content with Morph coming back, and they did the Ascendancies. So
yep.
All right. So what were the things that we're doing in limited? So
I mean, like we said, every clan or every faction or whatever had its own mechanic that you could kind of build around, but like that's not super exciting to talk about, like the different variations of your raid deck or your delve deck or whatever. But there was one archetype
that I pointed out.
Yeah,
the best archetype. And if they have Morph and New Capenna, this is the draft archetype that you guys should all get on early, unless I'm in your pod. And that is the deck I would play to the point where people after a while knew that I was going to cut all the dual lands in the pod in pack 1 was 5-color Morphs. So the ideal build, there was a rare called Trail of Mystery. It was like 1 and a green. And whenever you unmorphed a card, you got to search your deck for a land, I think, and put it into your hand.
Yeah.
So you would want to get Trail of Mystery, but like ideally you would open Trail of Mystery, then you were just 100% in, right? Then you just take all of the lands. So cons to make the lands work. You had in I think every pack one of the commons or the basic land slot was replaced by a dual land.
Yeah, it was comes into play, gain a life. Comes into play, tap, gain a life.
I think this is where the gain lands initially came from. So the best duels in Pauper started in Khans.
Yep.
And then at the uncommon slot, they had Trilands.
Trilands, yeah.
Yeah, basically the headquarters of each clan.
Yep.
And so you would just take all of those because it didn't matter what your mana did, because then you would just take all of the good morphs in the later packs, all the uncommon and common morphs that were good, you just take them. Because you have 12 dual lands in your deck.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what their unmorph cost is, because you will eventually have those colors.
Mm-hmm.
So you just know on turn 3, you're slamming a 2-2. And then on turn 4, you're slamming a 2-2.
Yep.
And then on turn 5, you would get to unmorph them, hopefully. And you could just, like, outpower your opponent that way. And the deck was a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And, like, was the thing I, like, wanted to draft most often. Now, this is when I was, like, newer to draft.
Mm-hmm.
So I forced this way more times than I should have. But it was a lot of fun. It was, like... I'm sure other sets did this, but this was my first one, and like you see it come up later. Like there's just a 5-color random deck.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've heard talk that Kamigawa just like has a take all the cards, figure it out.
Yeah.
Deck, like whatever the Kami War, that mythic.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that card's totally playable. I'm like, I haven't played it yet, but okay, I'll believe you. But like that's just a thing you can do. This was just a set that you could just do whatever, and it would work. You would also another thing is like it was really hard for you to ever be short on playables.
Yeah,
because what if you're like a Mardu deck and you're like short playables? Well, you took an off-color morph. Congratulations.
2/2 Gray Ogre.
This is your 3-mana 2/2.
Yep.
It blocks with other morphs, and if you can't unmorph it ever, okay, you have a 3-mana 2/2. It at least has power and toughness.
Yep.
It can trade with something.
Yep.
They're on a 10-turn clock. Let's go. Like you can still use the card.
Yeah.
So it just made way more cards live.
Mm-hmm.
I also started like. Think of how wild like Morph would be like now. Just be unmorphing like some crazy stuff, or like your hand's always full just playing morphs. Like the morph neighbor would probably be like, whenever you unmorph a creature, like draw 2 cards or something wild. So like, oh, this is great. So that was the limited archetype.
Permanent your opponent controls into a morph.
Morph target permanent.
Yeah.
It has unmorph cost equal to its casting cost.
Yeah, Oko shows up on New Capenna. Instead of making things elks, he just pluses and makes things morphs.
But he pluses 2, so that way the morph can't actually kill him ever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't expect you to morph your own stuff.
Yeah, we didn't expect that to happen. It's like, So now we have the standard archetypes.
Yeah, these I just pulled from like the PT lists. I pulled off a Goldfish, and we'll just kind of talk about a couple of them.
Okay. Now, before we get into them, this is the standard that, and I don't know, it's probably partly because this was early when we got back, but this is always the standard we go back to for like, this is what like a standard should look like.
Yeah.
There was some churn, right? Like we have 3 different versions of the Abzan deck on here.
Yep.
In different weeks, different things were better.
You also have 3 different versions of the Just Guide deck.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And like there were also other decks floating around that were like, tier 1.5 that were like good competitive decks. And I don't know if you saw some of the tweets going into like this set championship. That is an alchemy set championship. Brad Nelson was like, was it like 15% of people are going to play runes, 20% of people are going to play decks that they think beats runes but doesn't. 15% of people are going to play the deck that actually beats runes. 10% of people are going to play the deck that beats all the piles that people think are going to beat runes. And the remaining 20% are just going to play runes. And it's just like, oh, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like the thing here was like you had a lot more decks that could like realistically win something. And I don't know how that changes if you were to take Cons of Tarkir standard and throw it into Arena.
True.
If like you spit out that like no, this 75 is the best, most ruthless version of Abzan.
Yeah.
And this is what everyone's going to play, plus or minus like 2 cards.
Yeah.
Like we have now.
The power level across these was pretty flat. Like you said, there was a lot of good churn. I don't think any of these were realistically a ton more powerful than any other. It was just kind of whatever play style you liked playing. There was a deck that you could play.
Yeah. And so that's why we always go back to it as like, oh, this was a really good format. Because there wasn't like we always bring up like the like 11s.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't an 11.
I don't think so.
In this set. Like there were some really good cards, but there wasn't like oh man, if this thing resolves, the game just ends.
No,
there weren't any of
didn't
those.
end until you cast your 3rd Siege Rhino.
Yeah, or like your 2nd Wingmate Rock or something.
Yeah.
All right, so I will leave all the Abzan varieties to you, but I will do Jeskai.
Okay.
I'll do the first Jeskai. So there was like a Jeskai aggro deck. This was the Cameron Galindo special.
Well, you played the tokens version too, I think, but
yeah. So Jeskai aggro had Mantis Rider, so blue, white, red for a 3/3 haste flying vigilance.
You might know it from Modern Humans.
Yes. It had Goblin Rabble Master, like at that time like unheard of, like $10 or $15 like rare, standard rare.
Yep.
A 2/2 for 3 that made a goblin each turn that had to attack, and when it attacked, when Goblin Rabble Master attacked, you got +1/+0 for each goblin that attacked with it.
Yep.
So the turn it got to attack, it would be a 4/2. So on turn 4, it would be a 4/2.
Yeah. With
2 1/1s attacking with it. Seeker of the Way from Con. So Rabble Master was from Core 15 or M15.
Yep. But
Mantis Rider and Seeker of the Way, which is like a 2/2 with Prowess, because lifelink, was from Cons. You just have Sunburn, and then Jeskai Charm, which like gave all your creatures lifelink and pump them, right? Or dealt 4.
I don't remember all the modes.
It dealt 4, gave your creatures lifelink, and then pump them, maybe?
Maybe.
That might have been the 3rd mode. But like the deal 4 was pretty good in this deck. Same with like you could swing races by giving your creatures lifelink.
Yeah.
It did a lot.
Yep.
So this was like a deck that was good, but was always probably a little bit behind whatever version of Abzan was being played at the time.
Yeah.
So what were our green black X cards? Mr. Green Black X.
Well, we had 3 different versions of Abzan. There was an Abzan mid-range deck, an Abzan control deck, and an Abzan aggro deck. And they all played Siege Rhino, because Siege Rhino was pretty absurd. They looked very similar. Obviously, whether you're like control slanted or aggro slanted is going to change like the type of interaction you had. Control decks are going to play more removal, and aggro decks are going to play more aggressive creatures. So if you could determine which version you were playing against, you could kind of either play around or not play around various removal spells. But basically the creatures is what told you which version you were playing against. The aggro decks played Rakshasa Death Dealer. It was green-black for a 2/2, and you could pay green-black to pump it, and I think it had Death Touch, if I remember correctly.
Something like that, yeah.
Or you could give it Death Touch. Something like that. But it was a aggressive 2-drop creature. They also played the Lion from Theros. The one that you could monstrous it and put counters on it and make it hexproof. Do you remember what that was called?
I've never been more disappointed in you in my life. It's Fleecebane Lion.
Yeah, Fleecebane Lion, yep.
You probably cast a million Fleecebane.
It's got planes
He's got planes in it. I understand. You cast way more Fleecebane. I guess I was more on the other side of Fleecebane Lions go like, oh man, if they get to turn 5, like I just lose to this. I have to kill this thing before we get to turn 5.
Yeah. And then they also... Oh, no, I guess that wasn't around until the end of the format, because there was Warden of the First Tree also, but I guess that didn't come until Dragons.
Yeah.
So basically, the 2-drops were what determined if it was the aggro version of the deck or not, the Fleecebane and the Death Dealer. And then the mid-range deck played Anafenza the Foremost, which was green, white, black for a 4/4, and it exiled graveyards and pumped creatures.
Any creature that went to the graveyard from anywhere that your opponent controlled was exiled, and then when Anafenza attacked, you could pick one other creature to put a +1/+1 counter on.
Yep. So the mid-range deck played that just as kind of a mid-range threat. That also... There were a couple decks that utilized the graveyard also, so it kind of had some sideways utility as well. But the main creature that the mid-range decks played that the other ones didn't was the Wingmate Rock, which was kind of slept on during preview season and then was a $30 mythic almost as soon as the set came out.
It was 3 white for a 3/4 flyer that had raid. And if you had attacked, the raid was make a second 3/4 flyer.
Yep.
So, just real quick, I think this is important. So I looked up Rakshasa Death Dealer.
Okay.
So this was a rare that was played in one of the best standard decks of the time. This card is not playable now.
Oh, no,
it's
bad.
It is black-green for a 2/2. Like, you got that part right.
Yep.
Black-green, it gets +2/+2 end of turn.
Yeah, I got that part right, too.
Black-green, regenerate it.
Oh, so not Death Touch, but regenerate.
Not Death Touch, regenerate. but, like, in my head, I thought it was just, like, a mana to give it +2/+2.
No.
Not 2 mana.
Yeah.
Like, that's just wildly bad.
Yeah.
In Modern Magic. Yep. So bad. Just to like give you guys all a feel of like power creep. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Like that's an uncommon now.
Yep. And then the control decks basically played Elspeth Sun's Champion. And played way less creatures. Sometimes they played the Wingmate Rock, they played the Siege Rhinos, and that might have been it. There was a couple different Wraths around that time, plus Elspeth had a kind of a built-in Wrath, and that was, you just played some hand disruption, you played a whole bunch of removal spells, and eventually stuck in Elspeth.
So, the thing that Abzan had going for it was, one, it had Thoughtseize, because Thoughtseize had been printed in Theros. So it had Thoughtseize, which was the most powerful card in that format. And then it had the 1/2 punch. Oh, really, there's like 3 things, right? It had Siege Rhino, which was probably the best creature in the format. Right? It had Wingmate Rock, second best creature in the format. And then it had Abzan Charm.
Yeah.
and Abzan Charm let you like exile a creature. I forget what the writer was on it,
Yeah.
or let you draw 2 cards and lose cards. Yeah, so it was a card that was like, it was a modern card. So exile a creature with power 3 or greater. So exactly the kind of creature you want to exile.
Mm-hmm.
Draw 2 cards, or put 2 +1/+1 counters on among 1 or 2 target creatures. So no one really ever used it for the 3rd mode, unless it was killing them. So it was basically the first 2 modes. It was removal spell or card draw.
Yep.
Which is exactly like what you want. Like, oh, there's no creatures on the battlefield. I guess I'll take a draw spell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have 4 cards in my hand, and I need to kill that siege rhino. I got that covered too.
Yep.
Right? It was like super divination.
Yep.
So
modal divination.
Yes, exactly. So like the glue that held all these together was like Thoughtseize, Siege Rhino, Abzan Charm. Like those were like the cards that were always there.
Yeah, like the removal around this time was pretty good too. Murderous Cut was Delve. It was 4 and a black for instant with Delve, and it just killed a creature. So a lot of times, especially with fetch lands and stuff, that was just a 1 mana kill spell. You had, I guess, Ultimate Praise wasn't around anymore. That was RTR.
We had Heroes Downfall.
Oh yeah, you had Heroes Downfall. Yep. So
at rare.
Yeah, it's an uncommon now.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the removal was good too, and like you said with the hand disruption, you had Thoughtseize. It's like the best discard spell that has been printed.
Yeah, right. There was that your curve was usually like Thoughtseize into Fleece Mane Lion or Death Dealer or whatever, and then like your turn 3 was Sorcerer of Crufix.
Oh yeah, that's another card that. Like, the reason all 3 of these decks could exist is kind of because of Courser or Crufix.
Courser and then the Temples.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like put everything together. And this is like, coming back to Magic, this was one of the first times that, like, people were, like, playing 26, 27, 28 lands in their, like, mid-rangey control deck.
Yeah.
Right, when I was like, oh, I just want to play as many lands as I can because I have to hit my 4th land for Siege right now. But these Scry lands let me put all my extra lands to the bottom.
Yep.
So I'm just going to play more lands to make sure I always hit my 4th.
And Courser lets you get the extra ones off the top.
Yeah, so like it was just like this like confluence of things.
Yeah. The other reason that Courser was important is because it kind of kept the aggro decks in check. It had a real big butt on it, so you couldn't easily attack through it, and it was incidental life gain every turn.
Yeah. So, like, this is like, so when we talk about like churn, right? Like, you could just put together like Abzan Aggro, Abzan Aggro
now,
I guess, or just got like hit in the head. And
too much money this week.
Yeah, too much maintaining me, my car, and my house. But you could just build aggro and be like, cool, that's my deck. But realistically, like, some weeks Abzan Control was a little bit better. Other weeks Abzan mid-range was a little bit better. So there was some churn as to, like, what is everyone else going to play? What is the deck I should play to answer that?
Yep.
Right. Then you have one of the what are other people playing deck. This is the deck I played a lot. I played the second version, but there's Jeskai Ascendancy. So this is white, blue, red for an enchantment that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, your creatures get +1/+1, and you untap them, and you also get to loot.
Yep.
So there was a combo version where you play like Sylvan Caryatid and like Retraction Helix. And Retraction Helix was like tap, target creature gains tap, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand.
I think so.
So you would like cast Retraction Helix on something, and then you could tap it, bounce your opponent's permanent, cast a spell, untap, and then bounce a bunch of stuff. You cast 2 or 3 spells, you bounce your opponent's whole board, and then you've bought yourself time. And you would use Caryatid because it would let you
make mana.
It meant you make mana, but it was also hexproof. So like if you helix that, but if you had multiple mana dorks in your deck that has to cast a blue, red, white spell, you have your green mana dorks.
Yeah.
Then that lets you like just keep generating mana to cast more spells, and you're looting so you can turn the land that you drew you can turn into a spell eventually,
right?
And try to like keep it going. So the other deck, which was probably a little bit better, was Jeskai tokens, where you would go wide with things like Raise the Alarm and Hordling Outburst. It would also play Rabble Master, and then you would play like Ascendancy, and then start casting spells, and now all your creatures are getting big.
Yeah, every time you remove a blocker or hit your opponent with a burn spell, it pumps your team.
Right, and so there was Stoke the Flames, which is 2 red for deal 4 to any target.
With Convoke.
With Convoke, so you could tap like 4 goblins.
Cast it for free.
They would untap. You would loot. And now you've got 2 goblins instead of 1 goblins, and your opponent's at 16. And now you're like, oh man, I just got to like put together like 2 more spells, and they're dead. Right, so that deck was like depending on the version that of Abzan that was being played, that was sometimes the foil to Abzan.
Yeah,
was like you could get like going and be able to get through them that way, because like you could overwhelm the removal by playing a bunch of like little things that ended up having to matter. Also, we have a card that was banned in Legacy. We had Treasure Cruise.
I mean, it's still banned in Legacy.
Yes. To let you know how wild Treasure Cruise was, there was also Dig Through Time. And we went, nah, I'll just take 3 cards, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So Treasure Cruise, like you just play a bunch and then you just be like, oh, draw 3 cards, keep it going.
Yeah.
So this was like, again, like you had like some weird combo-y way to play. That worked out really well. So you had like your traditional mid-range stuff, and you had like a reasonable combo deck that wasn't like busted, and like they clearly knew it was going to be there, but wasn't just like required 12 parts and like never came together.
Right.
So then you have a deck that I remember vaguely playing against, but never played.
Heroic.
Heroic.
Yeah, there were actually 2 different versions of this deck that existed like through the cons block. Neither one of them ran any cons cards, probably other than fetches, though.
Yeah.
The Heroic was a mechanic from the original Theros, where if you targeted a creature with Heroic, something would happen. It would get a counter, you'd gain a life, whatever. It just cared about the thing being targeted. And it was kind of an aggro deck where you just kind of pumped up your team and swung in. Not a whole lot to say about it because we're talking about cons, and it didn't have any cons cards in it. So.
Yeah, but it was a deck that at least kept everyone else a little honest, because it could go like, was it the Trailblazer, the 1 mana like 03 or something, 04?
04, yeah.
Yeah, and then they could just be like, it's basically Boggles. But instead of putting enchantments on things, you had like God's Willing, and then you were just like, pump spell, attack you.
Yeah.
Then next turn, like pump spell, God's Willing, you're dead.
Yep.
It was, to really date ourselves, it was the Tom Ross special.
Yes.
Yep. Right? It was Infect in Standard, basically. Then another deck that I don't know if you played. I remember playing against
Logan played CDC Whip.
So did David Hammond. I remember him playing it.
I had all the pieces for it, but I was really into Abzan at this time. I think like current James would have liked CDC Whip better, but
yeah,
way back when James was very deep in Abzan.
So CDC whip was built around Sidisi Brew Tyrant, so it was 1 blue, black, green for a 3/3, and when it entered the battlefield or attacked, you milled the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you put a creature into your graveyard, you got to make a zombie.
Anytime a creature is put into your graveyard from the library,
anytime.
You make a zombie, so not just from Sidisi's trigger.
Okay. And then you played Whip of Erebos, which was 2 black
Yep.
for a legendary artifact that gave all your creatures lifelink for reasons, but then was like 2 black, return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It got sacrificed at the end of the turn, or did it just stay? I don't remember.
I think it got exiled at the end of the turn.
Exiled. It didn't get to stay.
Haste.
Yeah. So you would place a DC, flip stuff over, and then you would whip it back with the whip, and you were getting everything had life link, so you could gain life, and you could kind of have some toolboxy stuff going on because you could just you need tons of copies of things because you were milling stuff over all the time.
Yeah, this deck also ran the soul cycle from M15. So there was a big giant fatty that had a ETB trigger in each color, it did something.
They also had
Exile in the graveyard, yeah.
Yes, it was Soul of Zendikar was the green one. The blue one was Soul of Ravnica. I forget what they did. But they all had a big ability. Let me see if I can find one here.
I think Soul of New Phyrexia exiled and made your creatures indestructible till end of turn or something for 6 mana.
Here's a black. Soul of Chandelar re-released the game. So it was 6 mana, 6/6 first strike for 4 red. And it had. So I need glasses. As I get closer to the screen, it had 3 red. It deals 3 damage to target creature or player, and up to 1 target creature that player controls. And then same amount, exile it from your graveyard and do the same thing.
Yeah.
Soul of Ravnica was draw a card for each color among permanents you control for 5 blue, and then it exiled for the same thing. So you had these things that wanted to be in the graveyard because you could get value from them.
Yeah.
In the graveyard.
But they were also reasonable things to whip out of the graveyard too.
Yeah, hey, here's a 6/6 flyer that I whipped out of the graveyard.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm just gonna have to take that.
In the whip,
you'll gain
lifelink.
Yeah, you'll gain 6. I'll lose 6.
Yeah.
Cool. And you're gonna mill something else next turn, so this is gonna keep happening.
So,
okay.
Secret about James, one of my guilty pleasures. My favorite EDH deck is Sidisi.
Oh.
Yep. I have had that deck together. Not that I always have an EDH deck together, but that's one I've had together more than any other commander.
That is your commander. There we go. We've learned something now. Pleasure. Your guilty pleasure. So it was one of those tier 1.5, tier 2. It was really popular when the set first came out, and then it kind of fell off.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think that's why it stuck around. Is it was a lot of fun to play.
But I think it was. We've talked about sometimes you're just playing the worst version of another deck. I think it was worse. What's it called? Oh gosh,
Abzan.
It was worse Abzan.
Yeah.
Abzan just did all that stuff, but better.
Yep.
And I think Rest in Peace was also in the format, right?
No.
I think Rest in Peace wasn't in Theros?
No, Rest in Peace was in RTR.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think Tormod's Crypt was in M15.
Yes, Tormod's Crypt was in M15. So it had the graveyard deck ceiling.
Cool cards though, because it got to play Satyr Wayfinder, which I know is one of your favorite cards. It's one of my favorite cards.
Oh yeah.
And it also got to play the Spider. Do you remember the Spider?
Oh gosh.
1 green-black for an enchantment creature. It's a 2/3. In the beginning of your upkeep, you mill a card.
Nyx Weaver Spider?
Yep. And then
you mill a card.
You could sacrifice it and get a card back from your graveyard.
Yeah, it's like you paid like 1 green black or like
Yeah, I
3
think so.
green black,
I think it's 1.
and you just got to pick something out of your graveyard.
Yep.
And it was like a reasonable body to like block. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was a fun deck, but it kind of fell off as like Abzan was clearly the best thing.
Yeah.
But again, this is, the difference with like Arena. I think Sultai hung around longer than it would now.
Probably.
Right, because like I think like after like 3 days, people were like, "Yep, Sultai's bad, Abzan's good." But you got like a month of playing Sultai before it was like, maybe it's just
Sultai
bad.
came back for a resurgence towards the end of the format too. Like you said, it was around early, and then it kind of went away when Abzan got popular. But then, like it was back in a big way towards the end of the format as well.
Yeah. All right. So we've got some cards here that were super hyped before the set came out. This was just from like memory.
I was really hyped about this one. And then
okay, what's
terrible.
his first one?
Empty the Pit was the black mythic with set mechanic. So it was XX black, I believe. And it had Delve, and you made X zombies. So it just made like a ton of zombies. Except the problem was all of the other Delve cards were way better.
Way better.
Yeah, like you couldn't play 4 Treasure Cruise and like even one of these because like it just consumed all your graveyard. You had to be careful how many Delve cards you put in the same deck. So you really like a control deck wanted this to like close a game out, but by the time a control deck was ready to close a game out, they didn't have a graveyard left because they'd delved their graveyard away already.
Yeah. And also these are tap zombies.
Yeah.
So like you don't even get the like I'm gonna like take my turn and I'm gonna windshield wiper tap my lands. Just take your forearm and just go like these are all tapped.
Yeah.
Make 5 zombies and then you just die because you can't block with them.
Well, I mean, you really couldn't do that anyway, though. Like, even if you didn't have a graveyard and you were trying to hard cast this thing, that's 6 mana for your first zombie.
Yeah.
You're not going to... Even if you had 8 mana, you're making 2 zombies.
I was doing the dream of 14 mana to make 5. But, so you got to 14 mana. Okay, let me get paid off by dying when I'm tapped out because you didn't give me anything to block with.
Yeah.
So it was one of those cards that I'm sure that like read powerful in like future League, but just didn't work out. Or like, they've got to be tapped. Well, that used to be like zombies used to be slow, so they always came to battlefield tapped.
Yeah. Now they get to fall apart.
Yeah, now they fall apart. They are fast but fragile.
Do you think that could have been a card? Like X black. Like just lop off one of the X's.
And just give them all Decayed?
Yeah. Keep Delve. Give them all Decayed.
Maybe. You get like 1 swing with them. They can't... You still get the can't block problem. And your first zombie is at 5 mana.
Yeah.
Like you have to spend like...
Right, but you get paid off way harder.
You do.
Like your 14 mana... empty
is 10 zombies.
10 zombies.
Yeah, maybe. And with Delve, you could probably get there. Yeah, but it was too safe, but it was super good.
Yep.
Now, I think we remember this next one a little differently. We have Sarkin Dragon Speaker.
Yeah.
So I remember people being super hyped for Sarkin. One person in particular going around and trading for every Sarkin anyone opened during pre-release at like $40 going into pre-release is what Sarkin was at.
So I don't think that was going into pre-release. I think that was like during pre-release weekend.
But see, I remember it being that like everyone was super psyched for Sarkin, and then we all played Sora and Solemn Visitor.
Yeah.
And went, oh, this card's nuts. This is way better. Mm-hmm. And I remember them almost like flip-flopping. Where Sarkin went
die
down
super quick, but I think it was like the first week. Like up until pre-release, like nobody was thinking about it. And then as soon as people played with it during pre-release weekend, they were like, "Oh my god, this thing's nuts." And then at actual release, it had died off to nothing.
Yeah. Because, like, it just didn't fit in any of the Jeskai decks.
Yeah. Yep.
It was maybe at best like a sideboard juke you could play.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was wild to see like that like flip of like everyone wanted Sarkin, and then it was like nope, we were wrong, Sorin. Just give us Sorin. Sorin's like nuts, unbeatable, can't beat Sorin.
Yeah.
Remember someone like borrowed a Sorin and left with it from the store?
Oh no, I don't remember that.
Yeah, and shopkeep knew who it was, and like the guy didn't come back for a long time. Because like he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll give you the $5 for it later," and then it went to like $25 or $30 in the intervening time, and he just never came back.
Oh wow.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like, and then poor Sarkin didn't do anything.
Yep.
Sagu Mauler.
I thought this card was awesome. It was not awesome.
4 green blue for a 6/6 hexproof trample that had morph and it unmorphed for like 5.
It was 4 or
like,
5, yeah.
It was like 3 blue green or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Looked real good. It might have been our like young magic. Oh yeah, unmorphed for 3 blue green. Oh, trample hexproof when you flipped it over. Yeah. So unmorphed for 3 blue green.
Yep.
This is like the classic, completely and totally unbeatable and limited card. But like, its main problem was the rest of the teamer cards weren't good enough, and that's the same thing for our next one.
Yeah, it was a joke.
But like
Simic was completely unplayable.
Yeah. But like, you look at it and you're like, oh, if I stick this, I just win. But like, there wasn't anything to bridge you to.
I mean, like, that's not even the case though, because look at the other creatures that were being played.
Yeah.
Like Siege Rhinos and Wingmate Rocks. Like, I mean, I get that a 6/6 is bigger than a Siege Rhino, but you also drained them. And Siege Rhinos always traveled in packs.
Yes. When you drew one, you always drew like the second and the third shortly thereafter.
And Sagu Mauler doesn't get through 2 Wingmate Rocks.
Nope. Well, it doesn't get through one Wingmate Rock because it made 2.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. No, it just didn't line up well. But like, I remember being like, "Oh, this card's really good," because you're like, "Oh, it doesn't die.
Yeah.
It's really big. I can flip it on 5." And now we have 3 mana, 6/6, draw a card, gain 3 life, put a land into place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, this was also, like, Siege Rhino and Sagu Mauler, also, and Wingmate Rock. Like, you look at Siege Rhino and Wingmate Rock, they paid you when they entered the battlefield.
Right.
Sagu Mauler didn't pay you. And the morph mode was awkward because if your opponent knew that you had Sagu Maulers, they really prioritized killing your morph.
Right.
Because they're like, oh, if that flips over, I can't kill it. I need to kill it when it's a 2/2.
Yeah. And you couldn't even really bluff it either because the playable morphs didn't come until Dragons.
Yeah. So, you didn't have the Den Protector.
Yeah.
Den Protector and Death Disruptor.
Yep.
You didn't have those. So, yeah, he just didn't line up.
Yep.
And then we have our poster child. We talked about it before.
We have.
That is Savage Knuckleblade. The card that we all looked at and went, oh my gosh, this is nutty.
Yep. Teamer for 4/4.
Yep.
And it had an activated ability for green, an activated ability for blue, and a green activated ability for red.
Yeah, so it was. I brought it up because I remembered them, but not well enough. So it had 4/4 for Teamer, 2 and a green. It gets +2/+2. Activate this ability only once each turn, because 3 mana activated abilities. You gotta
Yeah.
Gotta cap those. 2 and a blue, return it to its owner's hand. How do you kill it? They just bounce it back. And then red, he gains haste until end of turn.
Yeah.
So it could be like green, blue, red, red for a 4/4 hasty boy.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of the teamer cards were trash.
Right.
And so there was like no way that you could play Big Knucks because the support around it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you were going to play like Courser of Crewfix, which is a good green card, you'd rather just play Abzan.
Right.
If you're going to play like a good blue-red card, which I can't think of any offhand that were in that set, right? You're going to play Jeskai.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You just got this weird squeeze that like the blue and the red cards seem to fit better in Jeskai. The green cards fit better in... that you'd want to play this fit better in Abzan.
Yeah. And
then the blue-green cards, right? A lot of those were tied to being Sultai.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just kind of in this... it was this kind of missing power.
Yeah.
Like, Savage Knuckleblade, as it is a powerful card. But it just never had the support around it.
Yep.
Right? Like, it's on par with, like, Anafenza.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, like, power level. But Anafenza had Abzan Charb and Siege Rhino
right.
and Thoughtseize and all those other cards we talked about to prop up a 3-mana 4/4. Where Savage Knuckleblade didn't have that. It was like, am I good enough? No. Well, crap. I guess I don't get to get played.
Yeah, you
Thanks,
can either play Knuckleblade or Rabblemaster.
Yeah, like those are your 3 drops.
Yeah.
Good job. Now, did I play a teamer deck and enjoy it? I did. But it did not, it was not great.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one where I went to my parents' house in Ohio and I just went into a random shop and played like their Saturday tournament with like teamer pile of cards and won. And they were just like, oh my, this deck's so cool. Like this is it. This is not replicable. But yes, for this, yes, my like was it back to nature, and I like blew up 3 of your coursers. Yes, the tech is good, but not good enough to consistently play.
Yeah.
So we've kind of touched on like all like the key standard cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Abzan Saf and Sidisi and Wingmate Rock.
Yeah.
Now we have here like, oh, good.
I was going to say there's one very important thing that we only kind of glanced over for a moment. And it definitely rolls us into our next category. And it's that this set had fetch lands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So up until this point, the only fetch lands that were legal in Modern were the Zendikar fetches, the enemy fetches. Mm. The original fetches were way back in Onslaught, which meant they were Legacy legal, but not Modern legal. So not only did this set reprint fetch lands to get them into Legacy players' hands and EDH players' hands, but it also made them Modern legal, so that Modern mana bases could be, quote, perfect.
Yeah, because Modern had like the allied they had Bloodstained Mire, but they also had the red-black fast land.
Yeah.
So like your mana bases were more tilted towards the allied colors.
Well, no, you didn't have Bloodstained Mire.
No, you didn't have. Sorry, you didn't have
like
Bloodstained Mire.
Catacomb.
Okay, so you were able to like split. You were able to split. I'm sorry, you were able to split where you had like Verdant. So your Jund mana base had to be Verdant and Bloodstained Mire. Not Blood. Gosh,
you didn't get Bloodstained.
Blackcleave Cliffs. Blackcleave Cliffs. There we go. That's what the fast land.
Yep.
Right, because you were missing part of the fast land. You're missing half the fast land cycle and half the fetch cycle.
Yeah, a lot of times you'd play like off-color fetches also. That with your shock, you could like roundabout get to what you needed to get. Like you might play a, I don't know, Scalding Tarn or something in your Jund deck.
Because that got you Stomping Ground and Blood Crypt.
Right.
Yeah. More difficult times, but yes. So what were our important non-rotating cards? The first two, Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise. Right.
Insta-ban.
Insta-ban.
Yeah.
Was it Bob Wong was the first person to just throw 4 in Delver?
Yeah.
And was like, oh, this is busted.
Seems good.
Seems good. And once Treasure Cruise got banned, it was like, Dig Through Time. Oh. Dig Through Time went into Omnitel.
Mm-hmm.
The mono blue omniscient show and tell deck.
Yep.
That, oh gosh, Chris Van Meter played all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We have Monastery Swiss Spear.
Yep. Burn
That
All-Star.
That I mistakenly told a shop owner. It's like, oh, you gotta get rid of your Goblin Guides because people are just gonna play Monastery Swiss Spear over it. And he's like, they'll just play both. And I was like, I don't know, man. They just play both. They just play both.
They just play both.
Shows what I know. That's why he owns the store. Stubborn Denial.
Yeah.
The ferocious counterspell.
Yeah, crazy. It's like the only card out of like the Teamer wedge that did anything.
Teamer Battle Rage, excuse me.
Oh yeah, in the same deck, right?
In the same deck, in Death Shadow.
Yeah.
In Death Shadow, when you get 1 mana 5/5s that turn all of your other things on, yes, Stubborn Denial.
Yeah.
And then Hardened Scales.
Yeah, sees play in Affinity and the, Walking Ballista decks, yada, yada, yada.
Dice Factory. Right, and that was a card that no one that didn't really do anything in Standard. So it's green.
Super cheap.
Yeah, it was green for an enchantment that just, if you would put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, put that many counters +1 on it.
Yep.
And so, we've seen that effect now on creatures and on other enchantments. This was the one that was first, and so just allows you to go wide with things.
Yep.
And make them really big, especially when you got what is it called? Oh gosh, what is it called? Gosh.
Walking Ballista.
Walking Ballista and Winding Constrictor later on.
Yeah. Hangerback Walker, I guess, was first.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what are the lasting effects of this set on the game?
Well, I mean, we kind of talked about it already. We definitely recognize Morph as a way to fix a limited format, or not fix, but help it out, make it, give you something to do with your mana early, as well as kind of fix your mana, and then a mana sink later on.
Yeah. Also, another thing to think about is, gold-colored cards are just extra powerful, right? So with New Capenna, the fact that you're having to cast cards of 3 colors means those cards have to be more powerful,
right?
So you're gonna have a bunch more.
That's just what we need, is more powerful cards.
Yeah, but I would guess that with the fact going forward that we have the the pathways, plus we have all the slow lands,
right,
and then we have the triomes. There's enough mana that you're gonna be able to cast these cards,
right?
So
are we gonna go back into 4-color Standard?
Oh, can we not have, what was it? Moist Abjadon?
Yeah. Dark Jeskai.
Also, the what is it? A thing that this had a lasting effect for. This gave us the names of the wedges.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
The wedges weren't named.
Yep.
So Jeskai for the longest time was America.
Yep. Junk.
Yeah, and then you had oh gosh, what is it? Saltai was Bug. That one we've not really shook.
Yeah,
Bug's still around.
Bug, yeah. And
yeah.
Mardu was it Dega?
Dega?
Named after some weird card from
I don't know.
Plane Shift, like one of those old obscure sets.
Yeah, but I think it was a Dega.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. But yeah, so you had so there really wasn't a like reasonable name for all of the
wedges.
Apparently if you search for Dega in Scryfall,
yeah.
Apparently that just
gets the card's name, I think.
Oh, I was gonna say I just got a bunch of cards not in English.
Oh, really?
If you just put in DAGA, which I probably spelled it wrong.
It's DEGA.
I just DEGA. Okay. Again, Hooked on Phonics got to West Virginia, so I can't help these people. That doesn't help either. These cards are at least in English, though. Oh no, you're right.
Yeah, Dig Evolver.
Yeah, and that's because it itself is not Mardu, but it has a kicker cost that it's one on the white, and it can either be kicked for one in a red one in the black and or a red.
Yeah.
So this was the first time that we had like official Wizards approved names for the wedges. And this wasn't this set's fault, but this was the start of like Magic's resurgence. Like this is when like Magic started to really pick up and gain some momentum going forward. Right, we talked about giant pre-releases. This is when if you listen to like the Resleevables and they like talk about GPs from sets around like right after this.
Yeah.
Like that's when you get like, the 1,300 person GP.
Well, I mean,
the 2,000 person GPs.
Like they would sell out.
Yeah, like you couldn't get in them.
Yeah.
So like it was very like this is when Magic was like at its like its kind of second peak. Like it kind of like it fell off after like years before, and it was like slowly getting better and improving, and then like it blew up around this time. So I think we shared most of our stories as we went along.
Yeah, I really couldn't think of any other like specific stories.
I will
weren't really like traveling to tournaments yet.
I
wasn't at least.
I wasn't. I will say that so a lot of people took the Abzan kit for the first like 2 pre-releases.
Yeah.
And Outlast is a painfully slow mechanic.
Yes.
Right? And like the first and second pre-release, like every round went to turns. Because there was always someone just like putting counters on things, or you'd get the mirror where they couldn't outsize the other person's things.
Yeah.
So they just never could attack. And it was just misery. I just remember being like, but as the weekend went on, people stopped playing Abzan. But those first couple pre-releases were just like
pretty brutal,
glacial. Yes. It's like, oh. So, with all that, I think we have given everyone a history lesson on cons.
Ooh, back in our day.
Back in our day, you got seeded packs. So, with all that, I think we got a show.
Yeah. We have a show.
So, like we said, we're probably going to, like, visit a set maybe once every set release.
Yeah, every so often.
And, yeah, we're going to try to just, like, I think just work through our time in Magic. We're going to start at cons. Next step is Fate. And we're just going to keep going.
Plugging along.
So, if you have any fun decks you remember from those times that you're like, oh, hey, yeah, like the thing I played in Fate was this or whatever, or you have other ideas for, like you said, how you want this show structured, you can get at us on social media. All the links are in the description.
Yeah. Also, if you're looking to pick up any singles, we would really appreciate it if you use our TCG Player affiliate link, tcg.casualtryhardmtg.com. Really helps us support the show. if you guys want to support us a little bit more directly, you can do so at patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. Patrons get access to our show notes. They get access to our pre-show, which, like I said at the top of the show this week, was kind of a show unto itself. And you also get put on my mailing list for when I send out little thank yous to all of our patrons. So patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG. Chip a couple bucks in, help support the show, and get a little something in return. You got anything else for this week, or is that going to do it?
I think that's going to do it. So with that, we'll catch you on the internet.
We'll catch you on the internet.